Growing up, I often felt overshadowed, with my parents distant and preoccupied with work. Books became my refuge, offering an escape from the loneliness that followed me into my teenage years. I craved connection, someone to fill the emptiness I carried with me. That all changed when I met Anne-Marie Santos in middle school. She brightened my life, and our friendship quickly evolved into a romance that lasted through high school, college, and eventually marriage. I knew from the start that I wanted her in my life forever, despite my parents' concerns. We were close, but maintained our own lives, yet the moments we shared were always the most special. She was my best friend, and I made her my wife. Anne-Marie and I were opposites in many ways. She was outgoing, I was reserved. She was athletic, and I was more academic. Despite our differences, we had a genuine connection that kept us together. We never forced our relationship, but we always prioritized each other, sharing everything from dreams to fears. I wasn't sure if I believed in soulmates, but if they existed, she was mine. When I asked her father for her hand in marriage, he questioned everything, and I had to prove my love for her. I made a choice to love her, through good times and bad. Unfortunately, the worst came only 3 years later. I still loved her and wanted her happiness, even if it meant sacrificing my own. In recent months, Anne-Marie had become distant, coming home late and no longer smiling when she saw me. The realization that the person you love no longer loves you is devastating. One evening, she quietly entered the dining room, and I noticed the change in her demeanor. "Hi, Annie." "Hey, Gavin. Are you okay?" "Not really. Please sit so I can explain." I had rehearsed this moment, knowing I had to make the hardest decision of my life, letting you go. "Annie, I love you and always will. I don't want to argue or accuse. I just want us to decide together what's best, okay?" "Of course, Gavin. What's going on?" Her anxious eyes gave her away. "Annie, I've always wanted your happiness, but I know you're not happy with me." She teared up, and oddly, it was a comfort to see she was upset. "I don't want to dig into details. It'll just hurt more. But if we can agree you're unhappy, it'd mean a lot," she whispered. "Yes, Gavin, I know. Thank you. Your honesty reassures me I'm making the right choice. I want a divorce." Miguel Santos was a man I respected deeply. He and his wife, Maria, raised 8 kids in a small house in a tough neighborhood. He was strong and tough, but it was his loyalty to his family that impressed me most. I owed him an explanation, so I sat with him on his porch over a few beers and finally told him, "Mio, why are you here?" "It's harder than I thought. Sir, I've loved no one but your daughter since I first met her. I promised you I'd always put her first, and that's what I'm doing now, even though I'm leaving Anne-Marie." As expected, he was angry, mixing English and Spanish in his demand for an explanation I couldn't fully give. "Sir, I love your daughter, but some things have to stay between us. It hurts to admit our marriage has failed, but I believe it's for the best. I wanted you to hear it from me." Eventually, he calmed down enough to let me share some details. Though upset and embarrassed, he allowed me to leave without further confrontation. Anne-Marie didn't cry or argue, and while I was relieved, a small part of me wished she'd begged me to stay. But she didn't, and that confirmed my decision. Her only reaction was when I mentioned talking to her father. "I spoke to your dad today and explained what I'm about to tell you. I hope we can part ways quickly. I don't want financial ruin on top of everything else. I've prepared the paperwork for dividing our assets, especially the house. Please review them and let me know by next week." "Okay, Gavin, I'll review them." I can already hear the criticism. Why not go after her and her lover? First, I don't have those skills. The last fight I got into was in high school when someone made Anne-Marie cry. I almost got expelled for it, but Miguel Santos helped keep things quiet. The second reason was my own mental health. I was a wreck, losing sleep, and almost got fired. I had no one to turn to. My mom died of chest cancer in college, and my dad, who became a hard drinker, moved to Florida and cut off contact. I needed a fresh start, and to do that, Anne-Marie had to agree to the divorce. I was only 25 and needed to rebuild my life. Revenge wasn't on my mind. 2 weeks later, we sat in the attorney's office. Anne-Marie gave up the house, which we agreed to sell. We split our accounts, and she kept the new car while I kept my old truck. Everything was settled except for the 90-day waiting period. The only thing I regretted was lying to Anne-Marie. "Where are you going to live, Gavin?" "I rented a small apartment near the office. I'll stay there until I figure things out." "Good. I guess I'll see you at the house closing, right?" "Absolutely. See you soon, Annie." In reality, I wasn't staying. My truck was packed, and I left my wedding ring on the kitchen table with a note that read, "Goodbye. I will always love you. Be happy." Before leaving town, I said goodbye to Miguel Santos. "Mijo, you and Anne-Marie belong together. Can't there be forgiveness? Remember your vows?" "Yes, it's too fast." "Sir, I've forgiven her in my heart. I love your daughter, but I need peace." Maria Santos hugged me at the door. As she let me go, she softly said, "God bless you, mijo. I will miss you." I left quickly before I broke down. When your spouse is unhappy, it's helpful to know why, but I had no clue. Little things had come up, like leaving the toilet seat up, but recently we hadn't even argued. I thought maybe she was stressed with work, but she said she'd be fine. Trying to improve things, I did more around the house, cooking, dishes, laundry, hoping she'd notice. After a few weeks, I even cleaned the bathroom, a chore I hated. If I hadn't cleaned it, I might not have found out. I wouldn't have emptied the trash and discovered the pregnancy test. I dug deeper and found a positive test, then checked the birth control pills. They were untouched. That's when I realized another man had gotten my wife pregnant. But who? It didn't take long to figure out. I called Anne-Marie, intending to ask, but her number was forwarded to the front desk. They said she had already left. Her car was still in the lot, so I drove to her office. About 20 minutes later, my hope that she had an accident vanished. 30 minutes later, I had my answer. Her boss, Michael James, pulled up next to her car. They kissed openly. My smile, once hers, was now for someone else. That was all I needed to know. I got home ahead of her and hid my feelings that night. She barely looked my way. In just over 2 hours, I knew my marriage was over and realized it was a 20-hour drive to Las Vegas. I made the trip in 4 days, driving through Nebraska, Colorado, and Utah. The peaceful scenery slowed me down, and I wasn't sure if my truck could handle the terrain. On the 4th day, I checked into a hotel, slept for 18 hours, and spent the next day filling out housing applications. Less than a week earlier, I was a newly divorced 25-year-old with no family. Now, I was a first-year law student in a dorm room, starting a new life. I wish I could share stories of new adventures after college, but the reality was different. I had no experience dating. Gavin and Anne-Marie had always been a pair. I had no idea where to start. During law school, I never went on a single date or made close friends. If anyone showed interest, I missed the signs. Instead, I buried myself in studies, using school as an escape. I spent 4 years earning my Juris Doctor and MBA, aiming for a 4.0 GPA. Anne-Marie and I once talked about going back to school when we were financially stable. So, when I moved on, I took the LSAT, applied to schools, and got accepted in Las Vegas with a full scholarship. I didn't know much about the school or the city, just that it was far from home. Once a month, I'd write to Mr. and Mrs. Santos about my studies. It was a habit I picked up from my parents, perhaps out of routine or a need to feel someone cared. 13 weeks into my first semester, I received a package confirming the exact value of my broken heart, $7,642 after fees. It was probably the third most depressing day of my life. Occasionally, I'd get an email from Miguel or Maria Santos. I never told them where I really was, and they never asked. They'd share updates about their other children, but never about Anne-Marie, letting me imagine I still had a family that cared. For the first 6 or 7 months, I kept in touch. They never explicitly mentioned forgiveness or reconciliation, but hinted at it until, suddenly, the hints stopped. I never doubted Anne-Marie would keep her baby. But I wondered if she'd tell her parents the truth before it became obvious. I also wondered if Michael James would leave his wife and 3 kids to do right by Anne-Marie. I didn't have the courage to ask. But I knew a child born to a black man wouldn't look like me. I felt like a coward when I sent flowers, balloons, and a gift basket to the James home, congratulating them on the baby. I sent a duplicate to Anne-Marie's office, addressed to the company president. I promised myself I wouldn't stoop to hurting anyone, even Michael James, but the pain was too much. I didn't spread rumors, just offered my congratulations. I was genuinely happy for Anne-Marie, knowing she was working toward her dream of a big family, but I couldn't ignore that her happiness came at the cost of my pain. Without knowing what happened after my gifts, I imagined a disastrous outcome for Michael James, however unlikely. This small, cowardly act allowed me to close that chapter of my life. I was still hurting, but it was over. My social life suffered for years after the divorce. My first real friend was a colleague 20 years older. I joined a small law firm specializing in real estate, where I found I had a knack for contracts, numbers, and eventually, people. Gavin, people need to trust you to solve their problems. They hand you the keys to their dreams, and you have to deliver. You've got a gift, and I'll help you use it. David Rothschild, the senior partner, became more than just my boss. He was my mentor and life coach. A legend in real estate law, he was known for negotiating multi-million-dollar deals. He made me his next project, and just 90 days into my career, he gave me my first evaluation. Gavin, you're dedicated and meticulous. You do excellent work. Thank you, Mr. Rothschild. But as a person, you're completely out of touch. Are you 30 or 90? Let's go for a walk. That's how our weekly Gavin project meetings began. Rothschild was brilliant. He'd ask questions, let me talk, and share stories. I opened up about everything: my life, parents, law school, and Anne-Marie. We have a lot to work on, but also a lot to work with. Now, let's get back to the office. At first, I didn't understand his motives, but after 3 years, the results were clear. His subtle guidance helped me grow. I started going to the gym, learning to cook, making better investments, and buying real estate. Without his help, I might have had a nice middle-class life. With it, I became a confident, successful business person. Rothschild never wanted credit, saying, "Watching you succeed is thanks enough." I worked with Rothschild for almost 5 years. After helping me succeed in business, he turned his focus to my personal life. One day, he casually asked, "Gavin, what are you getting your parents for their anniversary?" I was confused since both my parents had passed away, and he knew that. "Come on, Gavin. Next month, Miguel and Maria Santos will be married for 50 years. Only a jackass wouldn't mark an event like that." He was right. The Santos were like parents to me. I kept in touch with them, sending messages and gifts. For their 50th anniversary, I gave them the best: first-class airfare, a 5-star hotel stay, a limo, fine dining, and VIP show tickets in Las Vegas. I sent it with a note: "Happy anniversary. Use these as you wish. Love, Gavin." I didn't expect anything in return, so I was surprised when I received a call at noon the next day. "Gavin O'Connor," I answered. "Oh, mijo, what a wonderful surprise." "But this is too much," Mrs. Santos exclaimed. "Mrs. Santos, it's lovely to hear from you, but you and your husband deserve this, and I'm honored to give it to you," I replied warmly. "Oh, Gavin, you've always been such a wonderful boy. Un momento. Miguel wants to talk," she said, handing the phone to her husband. "Gavin," Mr. Santos began. "Yes, sir," I responded, knowing what was coming. "Gavin, this is too much. I can't let you go to such lengths. I can't imagine the cost. It's too much," he continued, his words rushing out. "Senor Santos, Miguel, Papa," I interrupted gently. "Yes, Gavin," he replied, finally pausing. "This gift doesn't even begin to repay the kindness you've shown me over the years. It brings me joy to give it to you. Please accept it in the spirit it was intended," I said sincerely. After a brief silence, he responded, "Si, mijo, we accept." "Wonderful. Happy anniversary," I said, feeling relieved. The conversation shifted to the trip details, and I explained all the highlights I thought they'd enjoy. After exchanging many words of gratitude and love, we ended the call, and for the first time in nearly a decade, I felt a sense of peace. As I reflected on that, I noticed Rothschild standing in my doorway with a big grin on his face. "Damn ungrateful kids," he teased. "Shut up, old man," I shot back with a smile. The Santos vacation didn't unfold as I had expected. I assumed they'd use the gift for sightseeing, fine dining, and relaxation. They did, but they insisted I join them every step of the way. It was clear they hadn't even been in their room for 5 minutes before my phone rang. "Gavin O'Connor," I answered again. "Mijo, when are you coming to see us?" Mrs. Santos asked eagerly. "Hello, Mrs. Santos. How was the flight?" I inquired, trying to buy a moment to think. Good. Miguel says we need to rest for a bit, but then we're ready to go." "When will you be here?" she pressed. "I can be there in about an hour," I replied, realizing I'd have to rearrange my day. "Great, mijo. See you then," she said cheerfully before hanging up. Honestly, I hadn't planned on spending much time with the Santos during their trip. They had plenty to do, and I had a pile of work on my desk. I was figuring out how to manage my schedule when Rothschild walked in with 2 paralegals. "Gavin, I've given you some time off. You need a break. Now get out of here and don't come back for a week or you're fired," Rothschild commanded, leaving no room for argument. The paralegals quickly packed up my work and cleared my desk. "Gavin, spend time with your parents. I'll handle the rest," Rothschild said, his tone softer but firm. So I did. The Santos insisted on visiting my office, though. Rothschild, who rarely joked about work, seemed ready for us when we arrived. He gave the Santos a personal tour, introducing them as my parents. In the conference room, he spent nearly an hour talking about my work, praising my accomplishments, and treating them like royalty. It was heartwarming to see the Santos beaming with pride, especially Maria, who kept patting my hand every time someone complimented me. "We're so proud of you, mijo." The rest of the week followed the same pattern. Rothschild's influence was evident everywhere we went. I had chosen the limo, resort, restaurants, and shows based on my business connections, but Rothschild ensured we were treated like VIPs. We were welcomed by owners and directors who shared stories of how I'd helped them and offered us the best seats, wine, and service. It was impressive. Mr. and Mrs. Santos, I have to admit this week has been more eventful than I expected. I know these people, but I've never received this level of service before. My daily life is much simpler. Gavin, it's wonderful that you have so many friends who wanted to show us how special you are. We always knew you were special, and we've always been proud to call you that. Maria couldn't finish, so Miguel stepped in. Our son, you are who you are and always will be. You took an oath before God that made you part of our family, and you fulfilled that vow. You've been a constant in our lives since you were a baby, and we've had the honor of watching you grow into a fine man. A father couldn't ask for more. Gavin, we love you and are very proud of you. Miguel Santos had aged, but his strength was still formidable. His hug felt like he might break a rib, and moments later Maria joined in, giving me a long-awaited family moment that filled me with joy. Their visit flew by, and I was sad to see them go, but I promised to visit them soon after handling some business. Rothschild knew exactly what I needed. I returned to work motivated, and when I shared my idea, he just smiled and gave his approval. The project was small and wouldn't generate long-term income, but it was probably the most important one I'd ever undertaken. In 6 weeks, I completed almost all the title deeds, secured a buyer with full financing, and made a few key phone calls. Armed with new information, I booked a flight back to my hometown for the first time in nearly 10 years. At the airport, I met Amy and Lydia, who worked at a coffee kiosk. I overheard them talking about their broken appliances and unresponsive landlord. When Amy handed me my coffee, I gave her my card with instructions. I overheard your conversation. I think I can help. Call the number and ask for Marcus. Tell him Gavin sent you and that you need Melvin's help. He'll take it from there. If you need help finding a new place, Marcus can assist. I've written everything on the back. As my flight was called, I added, don't worry about the cost. Just use the number. Good luck. Why did I offer to help them? Simple. I've seen a lot of bad landlords in real estate, and Rothschild taught me that real estate isn't a zero-sum game. The best deals benefit everyone. A few calls, a letter, and some work from a paralegal could get these girls out of a bad situation. We did pro bono work from time to time, and this was no different. I sent Marcus a quick email so he wouldn't be caught off guard when the call came. The flight to Omaha was short. I got my rental car and luggage, then drove around the city. Not much had changed, though it no longer felt like home. I passed through the Santos' neighborhood, where most houses were in disrepair except for theirs. The area had clearly been neglected. My destination was a new condominium complex with condos above retail spaces, restaurants, a theater, and stores, including a grocery store. The design was unique to the area, and everything seemed perfect. The apartment I had was brand new, with 2 bedrooms, a spacious open living area, a den, and a large balcony overlooking a park. The master suite was spa-like, with a jetted tub and a large tiled shower. The place was beautifully furnished with top-of-the-line fixtures and appliances, a few personal touches, and it would feel like home. The Santos met me for dinner at one of the restaurants, arriving on time and dressed for a night out. We had a great dinner filled with laughter, hoping the rest of the evening would be just as enjoyable. Miguel and Maria Santos, both 67, had been married for 50 years. They were still young at heart, but showed signs of a lifetime of hard work. During our time in Las Vegas, I learned they were ready to retire, but worried about their finances and living in a neighborhood surrounded by crime and abandoned houses. My goal was to change that. As Rothschild reminded me, this is what children do for their parents. I invited the Santos back to the condo for a late-night party. When we stepped into the elevator, they looked surprised. I didn't know this was a hotel, mijo. These rooms must be expensive. Yeah, we need to talk about that. When I opened the apartment door, they were impressed with the room. I had asked their 7 children to describe the Santos dream home, and I made sure to cover all their preferences. Their attention then shifted to the champagne. Are we celebrating? Yes, I hope so. What's the occasion? I popped the cork. Your retirement and new home. I raised my glass and gestured around the room. "Oh my goodness, this is too much. We can't accept it. It's not a gift, but you'll have more than enough to buy it. Please sit down and let's discuss it." They were hesitant, but things were going well. "When we sign these documents, we'll form a partnership, the Santos Investment Group. First, we'll close on 19 properties near your house. Then we'll package those with your current home, request a zoning change, and sell them to Property Management International, which plans to build a hotel and retail space next to the new arena. We'll receive the sale proceeds within 90 days. I showed them the highlighted dollar amount on the paper. They were shocked. "This apartment is rented for the next 3 months with an option to buy. Here's the cost." I handed them another paper. "Half of the remaining profits will fund a lifetime annuity for you both, with monthly dividends." I showed them the third paper. "You'll be able to retire comfortably in your new home. I'm just offering business advice and free legal services." They wouldn't become rich, but they'd never have to work again. It was a silver parachute, and it would be enough. "Gavin, how did you manage this so quickly?" "Buying the property next to yours took some effort, but Rothschild found a buyer through his connections. A new casino is being built across the river in Iowa, so we negotiated the price based on that. The zoning change will happen with the help of our buyer's contacts on the city council. The rest is just a solid investment." Maria cried but smiled, and Miguel shook his head in disbelief. "It's a miracle, more than we could have imagined," Anne-Marie's voice echoed with genuine surprise. "No one deserves it more than you two," I replied, offering sincere congratulations. I hadn't seen or heard from Anne-Marie in 10 years. Her parents and siblings never mentioned her, and she had faded from my thoughts long ago. But when I saw her again, it was as if I had awakened from a deep sleep. I had loved her throughout my youth and early adulthood, but now I felt nothing. Our meeting was entirely coincidental. I needed to pick up a few things for an upcoming trip, and the new mall had one of my favorite stores. While browsing, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "You have great taste," Anne-Marie said, her tone a mix of surprise and nostalgia. I turned to find her looking much as I remembered, older, with a less radiant smile and a few extra pounds. She was simply a more mature version of the woman I once married. "Hi, Anne-Marie," I greeted her, not quite sure what to expect. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. "I'm shopping. And you?" I responded, keeping the conversation light. "Oh, I work here now," she explained. "I meant, why are you in town?" "Just finishing up some business and visiting old friends," I answered. "Was I on your list of friends to visit?" she asked, her tone half joking but with a hint of hope. "Honestly, no," I admitted. "Oh, okay. Nice to see you, Gavin," she said, a touch of disappointment in her voice. "You too, Anne-Marie," I replied, thinking that would be the end of it. Awkward, but manageable. I didn't expect to see her again, but as I was leaving, I noticed her at the cash register. After finishing her transaction, she approached me again. "Gavin, how long will you be in town?" she asked, a bit more tentatively this time. "Maybe a few days," I replied, still unsure where this was going. "Do you think we could get together and talk, at least a little?" she asked, handing me her card. "I'll think about it," I said, taking the card but not committing to anything. I walked away without another word. I had moved on and didn't have anything more to say to her. Yet, against my better judgment, 2 nights later, I found myself sitting alone in a booth at one of my favorite bars. This was a place where Anne-Marie and I used to meet friends after work on Fridays. It felt different now. When she arrived, she was dressed up, wearing a little black dress that showed off her curves, black heels, and carefully done makeup. If she'd been a stranger, I might have bought her a drink. She looked good. I didn't stand when she slid into the booth across from me. She waited a few moments before speaking. "You lied to me," she began, her voice tinged with accusation. "And you lied to me first," I retorted, both of us knowing exactly what the other meant. She looked momentarily embarrassed before continuing. "I didn't think you'd actually leave town. I hoped we'd have a chance to talk," she confessed. "What would have been the point?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "I don't know, but I wasn't happy when you left," she admitted, her voice softening. "Well, you didn't give me a choice, so I don't feel guilty about your unhappiness," I replied, my tone blunt but honest. She seemed surprised by my frankness, but I wasn't interested in sugarcoating the past. "Gavin, I never stopped loving you, even after what I did," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I sighed, sensing that she was about to revisit old wounds. "Anne-Marie, the only good thing about our divorce was that you never lied to me, probably because I didn't give you a chance. But I won't sit here if you're going to lie now. What do you even want? Why are we sitting here? Nothing will change what happened. But you never fought for me. You just gave up without even arguing. It was so unexpected. Why did you leave without trying? I thought you loved me. We'll have to agree to disagree. From my view, you gave up on me without a word. You abandoned me without a chance to fix things. I just put it in writing. That was a mistake, Gavin. I made a huge mistake, and I'm sorry, okay? Anne-Marie's voice wavered as she spoke, her eyes pleading for forgiveness. I groaned inwardly. The years apart had given me clarity, but it seemed they had left Anne-Marie clinging to delusions. Nonsense, I shot back, refusing to let her rewrite history. Her eyes watered, but I knew everything she said was a lie. Just because things didn't turn out as you hoped doesn't mean you can rewrite history, I continued. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you care. I did care, Gavin. I loved you. I still love you, she insisted, her voice thick with emotion. You honestly believe that? I asked, incredulous. It's true, Gavin, she affirmed, her gaze steady. Okay, let's explore that, I said, leaning forward. Was it you or Michael James who decided I should be deprived of sex with my loving wife? She looked me in the eye, a flicker of shame crossing her face, but mostly reluctance to answer. It was him, she finally admitted. So your endless love for me let you sleep with another man and follow his wishes, knowing it would hurt me, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Gavin, she started, but I cut her off. How long did you wait before stopping birth control? I demanded. What? Well, she stammered. You didn't accidentally get pregnant. You wanted him to father your child. When were you planning to tell me? Or were you going to pretend it was mine? I pressed, watching her squirm. She didn't bother to answer. Why aren't you with him? Where is he? I asked, shifting the focus. He didn't want me, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. His wife found out, and so did his boss. His wife divorced him, and he had to resign. He left me. I had to quit my job, too. It was too embarrassing. And I'm supposed to feel bad? Why? I asked, my tone icy. I don't know, Gavin, she said, her voice breaking. I made a mistake, got involved in something bad and couldn't stop. I know I was wrong. Can't you forgive me? I love you. I died the day you left and missed you ever since. I wanted you to come back, to give me a chance to apologize, to tell you I'd never do it again. I'm all alone, Gavin. My parents barely talk to me, my siblings avoid me, and I have no friends. I'm all alone. Anne-Marie, I forgave you a long time ago, but there's no going back, I said firmly. You have your child. He can keep you warm at night. That's cruel, Gavin, she said, her voice tinged with hurt. No more cruel than the lies you're telling me, I responded, unyielding. I'm not lying, Gavin. I want another chance. It's what I've dreamed of all these years, she pleaded. It's never going to happen, I stated, leaving no room for doubt. Why, Gavin? I know you love me. You said you always would, she reminded me, desperation creeping into her voice. I've always loved you, but that's not enough, I admitted, feeling the weight of the truth. Why not? She asked, her voice trembling. 2 reasons. First, I'm not the same person who married you. I've changed, and you don't know me anymore. I certainly don't know you if I ever did, I explained. You do know me, Gavin. I'm still the same woman you loved. So what's the second reason? She asked, clinging to hope. That's the first honest thing you've said. But here's the second reason, then a question. You wanted someone else, and I let you have him without a harsh word, because I loved you. Since I left, I've gone to law school, passed the bar, started a new career, and built a new life. But I haven't been with another woman since our last time together. So tell me, how many men have you been with while you've been pining for me? Anne-Marie couldn't even look me in the eye. You see, Anne-Marie, I knew you were telling the truth. But back then, I didn't realize that the woman I loved was a lying, cheating person. How could I ever trust you again? Why would I even want to? Give me one reason why I'd let you back into my life that wouldn't just benefit you. If you can do that, maybe we have a chance. She cried quietly as I stood up to leave. That's what I thought. Goodbye, Anne-Marie. 3 months later, I saw them again, while heading back to Omaha for business. Everything was going smoothly, and Miguel and Maria were enjoying their new home. Seeing them so happy warmed my heart. The women serving customers at the coffee kiosk giggled and smiled this time. I was deep in my phone when they called my name. Mr. O'Connor? A voice called out, catching my attention. Yes, can I help you? I responded, turning to face them. At first, I didn't recognize the two women, but then it clicked. Oh, right. How did it go? I asked, recalling our previous interaction. Fine, Mr. O'Connor, the brunette replied. We wanted to thank you, but we didn't know how. It's Gavin, and no thanks are necessary. I'm just glad it worked out, I said with a reassuring smile. The brunette, a pretty woman named Amy with curly hair and a friendly smile, spoke while her cousin, Lydia, a shy blonde, stood quietly beside her. As my flight was announced, I began to gather my things, preparing to board. Nice to see you both again, I said, ready to leave. Just as I was about to step away, Amy ran up and handed me a napkin with a phone number scribbled on it. We'd like to thank you properly. Will you call when you get back? She asked, her tone hopeful. Caught off guard, I simply nodded. Sure, no problem, I replied, tucking the napkin into my pocket. On big holidays, the family always gathered. Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, and Cinco de Mayo. It was unusual to ask everyone to gather in September, but that's what I did. I was surprised everyone fit into the Santos' new apartment. The space was cozy but comfortable for the gathering. They all looked at me, waiting for what I had to say. It was going to be one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Maybe they wouldn't think it was my place to speak, but it felt right. As Rothschild always said, I was following my gut. I wanted everyone here, so I only had to say this once, and you all could hear it at the same time. Being treated as a full member of this family has been one of my greatest joys. Miguel and Maria, your love and support helped me through tough times, and I'll always be grateful. But I also remember that Anne-Marie was part of this family too. She shared in the joy and pain like the rest of us. She cheated on me, and I made hard choices because of that. But she didn't cheat on any of you. A few months ago, I spoke to her for the first time in 10 years. It was a painful conversation. I said harsh things to her. But what hurt most was what she told me about all of you. So, with all due respect, I need to say this. You all need to stop being little a-holes and stop ostracizing your daughter and sister. Until she's back where she belongs, I want nothing to do with you. Mr. and Mrs. Santos, I won't contact you, and you shouldn't contact me until this nonsense is over. The shocked expressions on their faces didn't bring me any satisfaction. With those words, I walked away from my foster family, unsure if I'd ever see them again. The next year was hectic, both professionally and personally. In the office, we worked at a breakneck pace that was unsustainable. After almost 8 weeks of 14-hour days and non-stop deals, Rothschild had enough. One evening in the conference room, he let us know. That's it, I'm done. I can't stand the sight of any of you. We're closed. Everyone, get out of here and don't come back for a week. I'll pay you if I don't have to see you. Then he walked out of the building. On the first day of my mandatory break, I cleaned my apartment and discovered furniture buried under piles of papers, clothes, and takeout containers. I sorted my laundry, emptying my pockets as I went, and found the napkin with Amy's number on it. By the third day, with a clean apartment and updated closet, the napkin was still sitting on my dining room table like a centerpiece, so I decided to call. I sounded like an idiot. Hello? Amy answered the phone. Yes, can I speak to Amy, please? I stammered, suddenly feeling nervous. This is her, she replied. Oh, hi, Amy. This is Gavin O'Connor. We met at the airport. You gave me your number? I reminded her, hoping she remembered. Yes, I remember you, Gavin, she said, her tone warm and familiar. Well, I know it's short notice, but would you and Lydia like to come over for dinner tonight? I thought I'd cook for you both and hear how things went with your apartment. We got kicked out of the office for a week and I'm bored, I explained, trying to sound casual. She giggled and I felt a bit embarrassed by my rambling. Gavin, we'd love to have dinner at your apartment tonight, Amy replied enthusiastically. Fantastic. Great. Can I get your address? I asked, realizing I hadn't given her the details yet. I provided my address, feeling a bit flustered but excited. Later, when they arrived, I felt much more comfortable talking to Amy and Lydia in person. Lydia was still quiet, but she made eye contact and smiled, which was more than enough to put me at ease. This is a great apartment, Gavin. Do you host parties here often? Amy asked, looking around appreciatively. My apartment was impressive, mostly because it was part of a project Rothschild and I were working on. I had jumped at the chance to buy a 3-bedroom penthouse with a fantastic view of the Strip, but I didn't mention that I also owned the building. Actually, you're the first visitors I've had, besides my boss, I admitted. Really? No girlfriend? Amy asked, surprised. Nope. I haven't even been on a date since my divorce 10 years ago, I said casually, focusing on the meal I was preparing. Amy and Lydia sat at the kitchen island, sipping wine while I cooked. Amy asked me a lot of questions, and I enjoyed the conversation. It was refreshing to talk to someone other than my boss and coworkers. As I continued cooking, I noticed both of them staring at me in shock. What? Did I say something wrong? I asked, puzzled by their reactions. You haven't been on a date in 10 years, Gavin, Amy repeated, clearly astonished. No, I haven't. I've been busy with work and studies. Is that weird? I asked, genuinely curious. Yes, Amy said emphatically, and even Lydia nodded in agreement. Well, I guess it is kind of weird, I conceded with a shrug. Jesus, Gavin, I can't believe it, Amy said, shaking her head in disbelief. It's true. Anyway, dinner's ready. Let's eat, I said, steering the conversation back to the meal. Dinner was fun, filled with laughter. I learned that Amy was in her final year studying hospitality management, and Lydia was studying English with a focus on creative writing. They were both 22 and had been living together since they were 18 when Lydia's parents passed away. Amy mentioned that Lydia liked me and would eventually open up more. The atmosphere felt a bit electric, and I wondered if they were flirting with me. I enjoyed the attention, even if it was just in my head. At the end of the evening, both girls gave me a brief hug and kiss on the cheek before leaving, with Amy suggesting we meet again soon. I jokingly said I was free for the rest of the week, and to my surprise, they showed up the next day with a picnic basket. We ate lunch on the balcony and enjoyed the day until it got too hot. Then they left for work. They took my invitation seriously. The next evening, they returned with pizza, popcorn, and a movie. They shared the couch while I settled into my favorite chair. The following day, Amy asked if they could use the pool. I assured her I'd take care of it. When they arrived, I had keys to the pool and gym for them, along with a locker. Sometimes it's good to be in charge. They had a surprise for me, too. When they came out in their bikinis, I realized I'd need to step up my workouts. After my week off, we fell into a routine. I'd work during the day, and they'd visit a few evenings a week for dinner, a movie, or just to hang out. On weekends, we found activities to do together. They also used the gym regularly, even when I wasn't there. Rothschild loved teasing me about it. If I didn't know you so well, I'd think you were dating 2 women at the same time. Give me a break, man. We're just friends, and keep your fantasies to yourself. About 4 months into our friendship, I noticed something was off. During a quiet Friday night dinner at my place, the girls seemed unusually reserved. As dinner wrapped up, the tension was too much to ignore. Girls, is something wrong? No, not really. Lydia hesitated, then spoke. Amy wants to ask you something, but we're not sure how to phrase it. Amy, you can ask me anything. I have no filter with you two. Just ask, and I promise not to be offended by my answer. Amy took a deep breath. Why haven't you ever made a move on us? Don't you find us attractive? I was caught off guard and took a moment to collect myself. You're both stunningly beautiful, but I haven't made a move for 2 reasons. First, I don't want to ruin our friendship or make you think I'm some old guy hanging around for kicks. Second, I'm not even sure I know how to make a move. I've never had the chance. Amy and Lydia exchanged a glance. Then Amy continued. Gavin, we really enjoy spending time with you, and we both like you a lot. I like spending time with you too. But Lydia and I are looking for someone special, and we want you to understand what that means. Ladies, you're both extremely attractive, and I'm sure you'll each find someone special without any problem. Lydia seemed like she wanted to say something, but Amy pressed on. Gavin, we don't want to find 2 separate special people. We want one. And we think that person might be, well, you. I was stunned. Before I could respond, Amy added, we want you to understand what we're asking. Lydia wants you to read some of her work tonight. We think it'll help you understand what we're looking for. Then we can talk tomorrow about what this means for all of us. Can you do that? I think I can. You just want me to read her stories? Yes, Gavin. And then we'll talk. I realize this might give you the wrong impression of me. I have strong beliefs about right and wrong, and I treat the people I care about with kindness and respect. I believe in live and let live, as long as no one is getting hurt. However, I can also be tough when necessary, especially in business. Rothschild called it my Jekyll and Hyde quality, giving people a head start but not hesitating to retaliate if crossed. I wasn't like this before Anne-Marie broke my heart. Her betrayal made me fiercely loyal to those I trust and ruthless to those who betray me. For a long time after the divorce, I had little interest in romance. The pain of the divorce consumed me, and anything that reminded me of Anne-Marie was unbearable. I coped by focusing on my studies and work. It took years for the pain to fade. I had missed out on a lot of life experiences because I met the love of my life so young. I had never asked a girl out, never had a one-night stand, and didn't know how to attract someone. Fear of rejection held me back. I was confident in many things, but thanks to Anne-Marie, I felt insecure about relationships. 10 years passed, and I began to think I'd never get the chance to try something new. With that mindset, I read Lydia's stories. They were beautifully written, full of vivid imagery and well-drawn characters. I learned a lot about Lydia from her writing. The next day, the girls arrived around noon. I was worried I might ruin our friendship. After getting drinks and snacks, we settled in the living room. Amy got straight to the point. Lydia and I aren't involved with each other sexually. Okay, that's important to know, but honestly, I hadn't thought about it. Lydia smiled as Amy continued. We've always looked out for each other. We're not just cousins, we're best friends. When we started getting interested in boys, we'd talk about what we liked and what we wanted. I've always been drawn to sweet, caring guys, while Lydia has been attracted to more assertive alpha types. The guys she dated were great in bed, but often treated her poorly on dates. Even though I understood her attraction, I didn't want her to get hurt. They sat together, holding hands. Then our worst fears came true. One of Lydia's boyfriends became too aggressive, and a few weeks later she found out she was pregnant. The pregnancy didn't go well, and they had to terminate it for her health. Complications arose, and Lydia can't have children. Tears filled their eyes. We had always dreamed of our children playing together. We were only 19, and that dream ended before it could start. But I love Lydia more than a cousin, more than a friend. We decided our dream didn't have to end. We would share my children and raise them together as co-mothers. They looked at me, gauging my reaction. I was moved by Amy's selflessness. It was one of the saddest, kindest, and most beautiful stories I'd ever heard. They smiled softly. But then we had another problem, finding the right person. The guys I liked were too weak for Lydia, and the ones she liked were too arrogant for me. We needed someone special, kind, yet confident. And then we met you, Lydia whispered, speaking to me for the first time. My heart raced. Amy continued. You helped us without asking for anything in return. It was one of the nicest things anyone had done for us. As we got to know you, we realized you might be the one we were looking for. We decided to be honest with you, even if it meant risking our friendship. I was stunned, realizing I'd been offered a life with both of them. This is a lot to take in. I need some time to think. Can we take a break and talk more over the weekend? Of course, Gavin, we understand, Amy replied, and they left quickly. I already knew my answer, but wanted to give them a thoughtful response. They had shared something deeply personal, and I wanted to respond in kind. Later that afternoon, I ran some errands, then returned to my apartment and sent a text to Lydia before calling Amy. Hello? Amy answered. Hi, Amy, it's Gavin. I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me tonight, I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. In the background, I could hear Lydia's phone ringing, followed by her surprised sigh. Gavin, I'd love to have dinner tonight, Amy replied warmly. Great, I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock, I said, feeling a sense of anticipation. After I hung up, I waited for Lydia's response. The message I had sent her was riskier. Be at my place at 6:15. Don't be late. You'll be staying the night. Her reply came quickly and simply. Perfect. When I arrived to pick up Amy, I was momentarily speechless. She looked stunning in a little black dress. I handed her a bouquet of white lilies. Wow, you look amazing, I said, genuinely impressed. Thank you, Gavin, for the flowers and the compliment, she responded with a smile. Our evening was romantic. We shared wine and sushi at one of her favorite restaurants, then went to a nightclub for drinks. We talked about our dreams, future plans, kids, and family. By the end of the night, we had bonded deeply. As we walked through a park holding hands, I couldn't shake a lingering worry. What's bothering you, Gavin? Amy asked, sensing my unease. Why me, Amy? I'm over 10 years older than you, divorced, and every eye was on you tonight. You could have anyone, I confessed, my insecurity slipping out. Gavin, you'll figure it out soon. But for tonight, can you accept that you're the one? There's no one else for me, she reassured me. Yes, I can live with that. Thank you for a wonderful evening, Amy, I said, feeling more at ease. No, Gavin, thank you, she replied, squeezing my hand. On Easter Sunday, I found myself in my old church, feeling out of place. I had converted to Catholicism to marry Anne-Marie and was a faithful parishioner during our marriage, but it felt strange to be there again. I'd been sitting alone for about 15 minutes when someone sat down next to me. "This seems like a good place for confession. Forgive me, Gavin, for I have sinned," Anne-Marie said, breaking the silence. "Anne-Marie, I forgave you a long time ago," I replied, turning to face her. "I know, Gavin, but you forgave me when I didn't deserve it, when I wasn't even sorry. Now I understand the pain I caused you. I wish I could take it all back. I always thought you deserved someone better. I'm so sorry I couldn't be the woman you deserved. Thank you for giving me my family back. My dad told me it was because of you." "Thank you, Anne-Marie. I appreciate your apology. You're always welcome." Mass went well, and Easter brunch was enjoyable. But as the day went on, I realized there was no longer a place for me in the Santos family. It was time to move on. When it was time to leave, there were tearful goodbyes. Maria Santos hugged me at the door, understanding more than she said. She placed her hand on my cheek, closed her eyes for a moment, and then whispered, "God bless you, Micho. I will miss you." My personal life was far from normal. For months, Amy, Lydia, and I had settled into an unusual pattern, spending most of our time together as a close-knit trio. If they had lived with me full-time, we might have spent only a few hours more together each week. I was very happy dating Amy, though our relationship hadn't progressed beyond kissing. She believed we'd both know when the time was right, and I agreed. The oddest part was that she had no problem making me tense and then sending me to Lydia for relief. Lydia, for her part, blossomed under this arrangement. Amy told me that Lydia had thought I was perfect from the start. Lydia needed guidance, which made her feel safe and cared for, and I gradually took over that role from Amy. The turning point was the flowers. I hadn't thought much about giving them flowers, but it felt right. I gave Amy flowers on our first date and at random moments because it was romantic. Lydia's flowers were a thank you, delivered separately due to circumstances. My first date with Amy was wonderful, but as I returned to Lydia, I worried I wouldn't meet her needs. I needn't have worried. Over the next few months, I thought a lot about how to win Lydia over, but that first night, instinct took over. When Lydia walked in with the biggest smile, holding her flowers, I knew I'd done the right thing. As I left Omaha for the last time, I felt a deep satisfaction. I had survived Anne-Marie's betrayal, started a new life, and built a career. But something was still missing: real happiness. On the way home, I made a stop, bought 2 things, and quickly returned. When I got home, Amy and Lydia were happy to see me, and we had a light, fun dinner together. I hoped to make our lives even better. After dinner, as they cleaned up in the kitchen, I watched them working together, enjoying the task simply because they were together. "I know why we haven't had sex," I said. Lydia turned to look at me, while Amy kept her eyes on the sink. "When we make love for the first time, it will be to create life, to share a piece of ourselves for a common purpose. That's why we'll be together. But there's an even more important reason. You'll be giving Lydia and me something we can't get on our own. A child." Lydia smiled through her tears. "I think you've been waiting for me to realize this, and you've waited long enough." I knelt down and pulled out a box. Lydia began to jump with excitement as I opened it. Amy slowly turned, tears in her eyes. "Amy, will you marry me?" "Yes, Gavin, I will. I'll love you forever and give you everything I have." Amy and Lydia hugged first, showing how close they were and how much we all needed each other. I slipped the ring onto Amy's finger, and Lydia admired it. "That's a beautiful ring, Gavin. You're not left out, Lydia. You're a vital part of our lives." I pulled out a second box containing an ankle bracelet with a diamond set in a Celtic knot with 3 birthstones: ruby, sapphire, and amethyst. "Lydia, we love you and need you. Please don't ever leave us." Amy was crying, but Lydia was calm as I fastened the bracelet around her ankle. "I'm home, Gavin. I'm not going anywhere." We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony with Lydia beside Amy and Rothschild next to me. 6 months later, Aidan James O'Connor was born. Twins Sophia Marie and Stephen Michael followed, and then baby Olivia Rose. The boys looked like me. Sophia was a tiny version of Amy, and Olivia was a clone of Lydia. Their bond was instant and unbreakable. Were Amy and I jealous that Olivia treated Lydia like her only parent while we were like a beloved aunt and uncle? Not at all. Amy and I lived as husband and wife, but Lydia was always close. My journey to happiness took time, but I found my place again. Our life together was as perfect as any relationship could be. I loved Amy, Lydia, and our children. Amy loved me, Lydia, and the kids. Lydia loved Amy, needed me, and gave our children a mother's love. We've never shared our lifestyle publicly, and only our closest friends know the truth, but we live a very happy life together.